The man filming shouted a warning, but it took just 3 seconds for the entire skyscraper to collapse. He kept recording as he and his co-workers fled in terror and were engulfed in dust. Across Bangkok, people watched in horror as the building, with a construction crane on top, crumpled to the ground following a massive earthquake. A major rescue operation swung into action, with 90 people trapped in the mound of rubble and twisted metal. The dashcam on Jack Brown's car filmed the moment the multi-storey disintegrated.
I think the immediate concern is, what's going on? Are we going to be okay? And then I said to my girlfriend, let's go. Let's just try and get out of here, because it was starting to get quite congested. People were driving quite strangely, and I just wanted to get away. And then suddenly we've seen the building collapse just to the left in front of us.
The epicentre was in neighbouring Myanmar, where it struck during Friday prayers. This mosque caved in on the worshippers inside. A group of monks, cowering outside the ruins of their temple, watched as another building nearby collapsed. At Mandalay airport, passengers and staff crouched in fear on the tarmac as the tremors continued. The terminal building too dangerous, as first a magnitude 7.7 earthquake struck, then an aftershock 6.4 in strength. In the Burmese capital, the general hospital was quickly overwhelmed. The sounds of heart monitors and screams of pain, punctuating an air of chaos in a mass casualty area set up in the car park. For the past 4 years, Myanmar has been gripped in a bloody civil war, and now nature has inflicted a disaster on its people. The country is largely cut off from the world, and communications inside are restricted. So the scale of loss they are facing is still unknown. The military junta issued a plea for the humanitarian support they have blocked since the coup.
I would like to invite every organisation, every people to provide aid. Thank you.
The quake hit at around 1 p.m. local time and was so powerful it reached the Thai capital hundreds of miles away, causing its many high-rise buildings to sway. Some rooftop pools producing crashing waves like the ocean, while others created cascading waterfalls. In a city not used to earthquakes, panic took hold and crowds fled for the safety of the outdoors. Hospital patients were evacuated onto a road, while a restaurant became a safe haven for these babies from a neonatal unit. Shocks were felt across the entire region, including southern China, where falling debris had people running for their lives.
We will know the scale of the damage as we move forward, but we can imagine, as our colleague already said, that the impact will be quite significant.
A state of emergency has been declared in Myanmar and in Thailand, where the Prime Minister visited the scene of the construction site collapse. The specialist teams brought in for this complex search and rescue operation must be daunted by the task that faces them. The giant shards of concrete in which they hope to find signs of life. Debbie Edward, News at 10.
Well, back in Myanmar, political fault lines have collided with geological ones, making the international response uniquely difficult. Since their coup 4 years ago, the military has tightened its grip on the flow of information getting out and of people getting in, as Sejal has been exploring for us. A truly dreadful situation, Sejal.
Yes, Julie, this earthquake could not have come at a worse time for Myanmar, a country in the grips of a brutal civil war raging for 4 years. Central Myanmar, believed to be the epicentre of the earthquake, is also the heartland of the ongoing conflict in the country. The military seized power in 2021, but now only controls a fifth of the country, the rest held by various armed groups. A troubled nation now hit by what's likely to be the biggest earthquake for 75 years, the size and shallow depth of which will maximise the scale of the damage, weakening an already fragile infrastructure. Pictures emerging show roads buckling, bridges collapsing and airports severely damaged, making the delivery of humanitarian aid here all the more complicated.
That Myanmar is very inaccessible in parts, and we need to find out whether roads have been damaged, whether communications are down. One of the hardest things is to find out the extent of damage. Up to 6 million people are in the affected area.
For millions, it was already a struggle to survive, living in constant fear of escalating violence and in the midst of a severe food crisis. A third of the population relying on humanitarian aid. The UK contributes, but America has always been the largest donor. However, Donald Trump's cuts to aid budgets were already having a severe impact even before this earthquake. Now, in a rare request, Myanmar's junta's leadership is appealing for humanitarian assistance, suggesting the destruction and devastation is on a large scale. China, Myanmar's closest ally, is yet to say whether it's sending support. Neighbour India says it's ready to help and authorities are on standby. Rescue efforts also face major challenges with poor communications. The ruling military has severely restricted the internet and cut access to social media, digitally isolating the country. So it may be some time before we know the full extent of the damage, Julie, in Myanmar.
OK, Sejal, thank you very much indeed for taking us through all of that. Thank you. And we can cross now to Peter Smith, who's in Bangkok for us tonight, where, as you can see, those efforts for rescue and recovery are still ongoing. You've witnessed some really shocking scenes, Peter, today. Just take us through it.
Yeah, well, Julie, the search and rescue teams here have worked through the night. That sound you can hear is the generators powering the floodlights so they can continue their work in the darkness. Where I am in Bangkok here is 600 miles from the epicentre of the earthquake in Myanmar, but it's still the force brought down this building with about 80, at least 80 workers trapped inside. Now, this collapsed building, it was a construction site, it was to be a government building. We also know that the construction workers inside were a mix of locals, but also a large number of migrant workers who'd come here for work from Myanmar. The dust from the collapsed building is still thick in the air here. We're seeing police, military and monks observing the site. The monks in their orange robes have been blessing the rescue workers as they go in and again individually as they came out. And I can report, though, Julie, that 6 bodies have now been recovered from this site and none of them could be saved. But still the rescue teams press on. Beneath this rubble, somewhere, somehow, they say there could still be life.
And dawn will be breaking soon, Peter. More looking, more searching, more efforts go on, of course, throughout these coming hours and days. What about the broader picture in Thailand and what you're learning there?
Yeah, we're starting to see daylight now, and even away from this site, the buildings that didn't collapse have still been damaged, and that's going to require a huge amount of work to assess those and the safety of them, because across this city, skyscrapers were swaying and rooftop pools, as we saw in these 5-star hotels, turned into waterfalls pouring down onto the streets below. Then there was this sheer panic. Lights flickered, windows were heard rattling, people reported hearing the thuds, and people just ran for any safety they could find away from buildings like this that might collapse and the debris. Now, this was an earthquake magnitude 7.7. To give that a frame of reference, when I was covering the earthquake in Turkey, where tens of thousands died, that was magnitude 7.9. So it's almost as strong as that one. And this part of the world is also still scarred by the earthquake and tsunami of 20 years ago that hit the west coast of Thailand. So that history is driving a great deal of fear here, fear that there could be aftershocks. We've had one so far that was about 6.4, 6.3 registered in Myanmar, but Bangkok is particularly vulnerable to this type of natural disaster. It's a city with a lot of high buildings, a lot of construction work ongoing. It's also a very densely populated population, about 9 million people. Currently, the public transport has been shut down. That's caused huge backlogs on the road. There's been completely jammed. It's made it very difficult to get anything in here, be either rescue teams or machinery, and that has hampered the early efforts for the rescue here. All of that, Julie, is why the Mayor of Bangkok has declared the Thai capital a disaster zone.
OK, Peter, thank you very much indeed.